Where do you normally keep the key? I think
Hello,
tomorrow.
everyone,
So
and
what
welcome
surface?
to
Okay.
our International Youth Day Google Hangout here hosted on the United Nations Foundation's Climasphere platform. We are thrilled that you all tuned in to join us and hope to bring you a really vibrant discussion with some of the leading young people around the world talking about climate change and what it means to us here today. How has it affected your life? How has it affected the lives of people in the communities of these young leaders? And really why it's important for young people, for our generation, to become involved today, to get active around this issue that affects us all very directly, and why the younger generation is concerned about climate change, why it matters to us, and how we can make an impact through our respective fields, through policy, and compel leaders to actually make tangible action. So I'm Erin Schrode. I'm the co-founder of Teens Turning Green, a nonprofit that focuses on environmental education advocacy. We work with high school and college students in the US and all around the world. I'm coming to you live from Brunei, where I'm here to speak at the National Environmental Conference. And for me, the environment is my everything. We have one planet, and if we're not going to stand up for it, who is? And I'm an eternal optimist and a proud member of my generation, so I like to think that we're leading and taking the torch in a big way. And I have with me here today three incredibly powerful women: Jordan Howard, the co-founder of GenYNot; Raquel Rosenberg, the founder of Engajamundo. I hope I'm saying that correctly, and Esther, who is the co-founder of Nigerian Youth Climate Coalition. So these women are now going to share with you a little bit about their stories, and then we'll dive right into questions, so stay tuned. You want to kick it off, Jordan?
Yes, I'll kick it off. Thanks, Erin, and thanks for having me today. My name is Jordan Howard. I am from Los Angeles, California. I'm a Cali girl at heart. I'm the co-founder of GenYNot. Yes, for the Cali girls. I'm a co-founder of GenYNot. GenYNot is a platform that I created with a lot of my other friends that are youth activists to really engage young people in social issues and engage them in a way where we talk about our personal experiences and how our personal experiences really make up our perspectives on a lot of different issues. My expertise is sustainability. I've been a green girl since I was about 15 years old when I started to learn about environmental action. So I'm excited to be a part of the conversation today.
Thank you so much, Jordan. From one green girl to another. I want to now toss it over to you, Raquel, to share why this matters to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Raquel. I'm from Brazil. I'm 24, and I'm a co-founder of an NGO called Engajamundo. Very good pronunciation, Erin. Thanks. And our objective is to increase the participation of the Brazilian youth at the UN talks. So we've been working with climate change, but also with gender issues, and I'm really happy that we have all girls here. And yes, this is girl power, climate justice.
Yes,
And
exactly.
yeah, and I think my main concern about having youth speaking about climate change is because this is not about future generations anymore. We're talking about our present. It's about our life and the impacts that we're going to suffer. So that's why I think this discussion is amazing, and I'm really happy to be here with you.
Oh, I could not agree more. I am invigorated and excited to have four women together talking about this issue. We need more of that energy in the climate change discussion, like you said, that's going on right now in the present for our generation. All right, Esther, give us your scoop.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Ester Agbarakwe. My friends call me Extra Climate. Interestingly, I'm the co-founder of the Nigerian Youth Climate Coalition. That's the biggest youth climate movement in Nigeria. We started in 2009 after the Copenhagen conference, and we actually have pretty much good women in the movement, actually. So I'm very proud to be here. I'm passionate about climate change because the young people like us who would inherit the environment whichever way they want to live it, and especially young women who actually, have different coping capacity than the men. So I think that this discussion today is a good opportunity for us to share and then pass on our message to the leaders.
I could not agree more, and I'm really excited for us to be able to share amongst ourselves and with people all around the world so that they can take charge of this issue. We represent 4 corners of the globe, and that's really exciting. So, without further ado, I want to ask you a question, Jordan. What do you believe to be the #1 factor that has propelled so many members of our generation to take action around climate change?
I think the #1 factor has been we've changed the way that we talk about climate change. We used to talk about climate change, we used to talk about the gloom and doom, and we used to focus on the issues and more of like pointing the finger at people for not being environmentalists or taking positive environmental actions. In our generation, we've changed it from what have you done to what can you do? And really have really become the optimists, and we are like eternal. I feel like millennials in general are eternal optimists. Like we're all like way too optimistic about a lot of issues, but that optimism is good because it brings people in. We're able to bring people in and inspire them to create solutions. So whether that is educating ourselves out of this problem and giving people environmental education, talking about climate change and how do you bring climate change, this big issue, and make it personal for someone. And then you have the innovators of our generation that are saying, okay, well, I'm going to go and get an engineering degree and try to innovate ourselves out of this problem and focus on engineering. And then you have people that are looking at consumption, which some people in other generations might say consumption. Well, that's how we got ourselves in this problem. But a lot of times, can we consume ourselves out of this problem? What are we creating? What are we buying? And what is it doing to the planet? So I think our generation has understood that everyone has a role. And those roles will be very different, but everyone has one. So we're asking, what is our role? What can we do for this problem? What are the solutions, instead of pointing the fingers and playing this gloom and doom game?
I could not agree more. That is what I preach every day, as you know. But it's not like, no, gloom and doom does not inspire action. And how can we be those stewards? And I love what you said about everyone having a role in today's world and in this global challenge. So, Esther, I want to toss it to you now. Which climate change policies have you seen as having the most impact on young people specifically?
I think, well, we have the global policy for climate change, for me, which is part of the global governance process. But for coming a little bit home into Nigeria, we have our own climate of youth and children. And the climate change policy has been the one that has the greatest impact into your generation, because the policy allows us to participate in the decision making of the process, although as observers. But at least it allows us to share our experience in terms of how climate change is impacting us and that. But recently, I think one of the important policies as part of the UNFCCC, the UNCCC Convention, is the article talked about awareness and education, I think Article 16. It talks about how young people can play a big role in empowering, informing, and engaging their peers. Article 6, yes, Article 6 of the UNFCCC Convention, it talks about empowering and raising the awareness about climate change among our generation. I think to me is the greatest policy that has impact on young people. And I think that for it to have more impact is when the UNFCCC parties come home to domesticate that articles where they allow young people to be involved at all stages of policy design, implementation, and evaluation, especially like in my country, Nigeria, that we have a policy that we're not part of in designing it, and we don't even know where to assess the policy, for instance. So it's a bit different conversation. But at the global scene, the Article 6 is one of the most important policy that has affected young people around the world.
Absolutely true. It's about participation, taking a role in the decision-making process, being part of designing a better future, no matter where you are, whether you're in Nigeria or Brazil or the States or Southeast Asia. So Raquel, what are some of the youth initiatives that you can speak to being implemented in your country to combat climate change?
For my country, we are we're actually evolving. We came into the scene where hello.
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, we came into the scene where the conversation around climate change was only around adults' generation, or exclusive to NGOs that have been historically involved in the conversation and actions. So our initiative was to first raise the profile of climate change as it affects young people, and also provide opportunity for young people to get informed about the issue itself, what they can do, and how they can hold government accountable. So we've got a lot of initiatives that we've done that. One of the initiatives that we had was successful was called the Canadian government supported initiative we had called Youth Climate Communication Project, because we thought about first providing information about climate change first to young people, and from there they can be empowered to take action because they were not really involved. And one of those things we did was to have youth clubs in secondary schools and having town hall meetings and open houses. We have meetings in houses, in offices, anywhere we go. And another interesting thing we did, including myself and Hamza, is to, go to meetings that we're not even invited. We just bash into meetings uninvited, raise up our hands, disagree with them that they don't have young persons at that meeting. The meeting is not valid. So we did a lot of advocacy work, but unorthodox way of engaging, and it's been successful. But recently now, one of the initiatives we're using right now is using social media to raise awareness about climate change a lot. Like this on social media, my name is Ester Climate. I have my colleague called Idowu Climate. So trying to add climate into the conversation around politics, around development, around gender, make sure that we have climate change in them. So we holistically using social media tools that we have, having an event called Climate Wednesday every week, going to places, trying to do anything possible. I mean, we're making sure that people are aware that climate change is real, it's happening, and we need to take action very fast.
Yes, yes, yes. I think that everything you just said was a complete universal truth. The need to raise the profile, to create these sorts of unorthodox modes of nonviolent, inserting ourselves in the conversation, and the youth clubs and communications and social media. Absolutely. So I want to hear, Raquel, what are you doing? Are you using similar tactics, and what are some of the initiatives that are being implemented that you found successful in Brazil?
So from the government's perspective, we do not have any strong policies on climate education. So we're trying to do it ourselves as young people here in Brazil. So as Engajamundo, we have a capacity building material that we developed last year, and we've been implementing around Brazil. Brazil is a huge country. So our goal is to go to the 5 regions of Brazil, which is almost the whole Europe. And this capacity event is to raise awareness and make sure that young people, firstly, they know that they can go to a conference and try to influence their leaders. And second, that they can be part of the solution as well. So we speak about bicycling and having your own garden with stuff and doing small things that you can change in your life that are going to make a huge difference if we all do the same. So from another perspective, we have a collective here called Climax, and Engajamundo is part of it, I'm part of it. And the idea of Climax, we say, as this is a youth Google Hangout, I think I can talk about it. So our idea is to sexify climate change, to make it sexier and easier to understand and not like a technical and boring thing. So Climax, it's the collective we use to do it. So we have actions like going to the supermarkets and gluing stuff in the meat products, saying that meat and consuming meat is going to affect your climate now or in the future. And that's an information that people don't know about, and that's our way of showing it. We've been doing things like flash mobs and Google Hangouts every month, so that people can understand better what we're talking about and what is the relation between like manifestations and climate change and the World Cup and climate change. So we've been like developing different things and painting walls and doing everything we can so that people can see what's climate change and understand the problem that we're facing. So let's sexify the communication of climate change.
I love that. I think all of our faces just lit up when you use that language. I mean, that's the sort of cutting edge stuff that we need to take this dialogue beyond the walls of us, already rabble-rousing environmentalists and bring it to the masses. Rock on. Let's sexify climate change. So Jordan, while we're talking, tell me about what have you found that works in Los Angeles and in the States?
Sexifying it definitely works. That's amazing. I love that. Let's sexify the communication of climate change, because that's one of the problems. Like, climate change is hard to communicate. It's hard to go to a young person and talk about a problem that is so broad and can also be so far away. But when you talk about how it connects to their personal lifestyles, and then not just say personal, because it's good to go personal and say, I was reading an article the other day about the drought in California and how bottled water is now contributing to the drought in California because of a lot of the water that we get in the States comes from California. In California, we're in one of the worst droughts that we've had in a really long time. And so something like that, and making it individual and talking about that bottled water that I didn't think of when I drank it 3 days ago, and maybe could have got the water from the tap, but it's contributing to climate change. So you make it individual, and then you also talk about how this is not only a problem in California for Jordan Howard in Los Angeles, but it's a problem for someone on the other side of the states. And it's not only a problem for someone on the other side of the states, it's a problem in Southeast Asia. What's the problem there? And kind of making it local to global. And when you make it local to global, I understand that like it is my job to fix this. And I understand that I have a stake in this, not only for my future, but for future generations and my entire generation. So that's what we've seen when we talk about the communication and we change the way that we're communicating and making it an individual problem instead of this really big problem that my science teacher is so passionate about. Young people are fired up to do something. And we got to give them something to do. That's why I love the idea that Raquel was talking about when you're talking about going in supermarkets and doing something, because we want to feel like we are a part of something. I think next we got to take it to like the policy level. We got to get our policymakers involved and get them to understand, just like what Esther said, get them to understand that if you don't have young people at the table, then this isn't a table that we should be at. This is a discussion that we should have. Because our futures are at risk, and this is a problem. Climate change is a problem for the young generation, so we need to be at this solution-making table. We can no longer be on the menu and not at the table, and we got to get our policymakers to understand that.
Preach! I love it. Absolutely. We do, and we're showing up at the table, and I think, like Esther said, however we can get to the table, get to the table.
Absolutely.
All right, let's toss it back to you, talking about this activist spirit. I see us all fired up here. So there's been a rise in the number of youth activists in the U.S., and Jordan and I met many moons ago, and we've seen a lot of our peers feel this tide and step up to the plate. Do you see a similar pattern globally?
I would say this is really hard, Erin, because especially in the UN talks, we have still a small representation of the Global South youth. So I was in Bonn in June. I was in Bonn during the intersessionals, and I was the only young people from the Global South. And we had a lot of youth representatives, but they were all from Europe or the US. So we still have this huge problem, which is like we're not well represented there. And we created Engajamundo from Rio Plus 20 initiative that we had. And now we're trying to increase the participation of Brazil's youth. And I think COP20 now in Peru is a great opportunity for us because it's going to be here right by our side. So I call every Latin American youth that is watching it, so let's go and let's occupy Lima, because we can have like a huge representation there, and this is hard to happen. So let's go.
I just got chills hearing that. That's your call to action. Who's ever listening, whoever knows people, young people in the global south. It's powerful, and it's absolutely true, and it's something that we all have to do better about. So, Esther, another place that, from the conferences I've been to, from the friends I have, having spent time living personally in West Africa, Africa is an entire continent that is often underrepresented at a lot of these conferences, also young people. So can you speak to that and sort of what you see in the rise, the really encouraging rise of activism there, and how that relates on a global scale?
I think I need to agree with Raquel. We actually seeing a limited number of young people from the global south, particularly Africans, at the UNFC or international governance meetings on climate change. But I'd like to share a very good success story. For me, the Copenhagen conference that was held in 2009 was very, very amazing for young Africans. We did get support to attend, and so we had a lot of young persons who attended it. The youth major group in the UNFC process has been doing it also, has tried its best to have support to come, because it's cost effective to bring someone from Africa to Europe to attend the meeting. It has financial implications. So the UNFCCC youth major group tries to get funding to bring at least 1 or 2 young persons from Africa to attend. But let's just be reminded that in 2012, Africa hosted one of the climate change conference in Durban, South Africa, where we had the maximum number of young persons there. And there we created a South African Youth Climate Coalition that was given birth there, and we saw a lot of interest. But again, the issue of funding is key, because without funding, young persons cannot go to attend this meeting, because poverty is high here. Unemployment is an issue. Most of the funding for project does not include international conferences. So you realize that the funding for youth project and climate change does not permit you to participate at this event, but can allow you to participate at a local event. So you can see 1 or 2 young persons coming. But for me, I do have a particular interest. When I came into the scene, when we talk about Africa and climate change, most of the focus always goes to East Africans. They forget that there are West African young people doing well thing, there's South African, the North African doing well thing, but the funding goes first to East Africa, to Kenya. I'm not disagreeing, but Africa is a continent, and one country cannot represent the entire continent. So these are some of the issues that we've seen a lot. But I must give kudos to my Nigerian youth activists who've risen up to that challenge. We're a very big country with lots of young people who are passionate about that. Hansi, for instance, and FBI. And then again, we have this network called the African Youth Initiative on Climate Change that was created when the first UNFCCC conference took place in Nairobi in 28 or 29, I'm not sure. But we have the African Youth Climate Youth Network, the biggest Pan-African youth network on climate change, with one voice. We have that, and they're stronger. In fact, we're trying to do our congress this year, bringing young persons together to discuss climate change and prepare for the Paris conference. But again, they all have costs, because Africa is big. Traveling within Africa itself has its own cost implications than traveling outside of Africa. So we need to do that. And we need to see how our government can support us. Most of our colleagues in global North got support from their government to attend this event. Historically, Africa doesn't have that support for its young persons to attend events out of the country. We don't have that intergenerational partnership for that. We only see old people go there and they go up, and then we don't have that continuity. And then you can see that sometimes we lack the experience to engage further because the continuity has been disrupted. But you can see someone from Germany, for instance, who can attend this conference at the age of 19, goes back at the age of 30, at the age of 50, can negotiate for his country. You don't see that in Africa, really. So at one point, we're trying to lobby our government to make sure that at least one person join the delegation. Some country has been doing that. Nigeria have done that once. Kenya do that. But it's not enough, So we need to find ways where we can get resources from all the places and opportunities that are existing for global youth. A certain percentage have been given to young people from the global south. Not the same with the global north because of these capacities, but because we just want to show our government that it can work.
I think that was very Very well said, and we do need this support, whether you have a historical background of it or not, to really get young people fired up. There's something that you touched on that I would love to hear a little bit more from you, Jordan, about, which is this the need for intergenerational collaboration and partnership. And as someone that I know has benefited, I'm sure we all have, from mentorship, how has that played into the role that you have assumed for yourself as a young climate leader?
Yeah, that's a really good question because it's so important. A lot of times when we talk about youth engagement, sometimes I'll say older people assume that we are just talking about young people taking over and move out the way. We want to take over, but we really want that intergenerational partnership. That's what it's about. It's about understanding that, like, youth engagement is about understanding that young people's ideas matter, and that youth leadership matters, but it will only matter, and it matters to us, it's more authentic to us when you help us, when you are by our sides and you are mentoring us, because like you do have the answers. Older people, you do have the answers, and we know that you have the answers, but we have answers as well, and we have questions as well, and that's what it's about. We want to come to a table where we can all be at the table, and I can be right by your side, and we can do this together, because they have our older generations do have knowledge that we don't have, and we understand that. And it's the only way that we can, like, sustainably benefit. If you want to talk about sustainability, like, we need that mentorship and we need that intergenerational dialogue because it's crucial.
Absolutely, it is. We need that. It's an exchange, right? And it is ever evolving, and hopefully that's something that we learn and we pass down as mentors to new mentees down the road. So, well, I'll stick with you, Jordan, for one more question. In 5, 10, 20 years down the road, when you are a mentor of a young mentee, how will climate change affect them? How will climate change affect people in our country, in the United States?
That's the hardest question of this, like, whole chat, because it, like, what are we gonna do now? Because it all has to do with what type of action are we making right now, and if we do all of the right things, which is if we bring young people to the table, if we make sure that they're at the table, if we're providing them with the funding, if our leaders, the policymakers, are listening to us, then maybe this won't be as big of a problem as it could be. But it could get nasty, and it's hard to say, and I don't want to be the one on the Hangout that's just like, it could get nasty, but it can get nasty. So I think it's not about what will happen in 20 years. How will we prevent what could happen in 20 years? What are we doing tomorrow to prevent what could happen in 20 years? So what type of action are we making so that I don't have to be this mentor like, yeah, I told y'all when I was 21 years old, I was talking about that. Sorry, we didn't do all the right things. So we have to make sure that we are sexifying this issue, and that we are sexifying the communication, that we're looking at the intersections of climate change, and not looking at climate change just as an environmental problem, but it's an economic problem, it's a social problem. Looking at it from different lenses and pulling in those other people that are fired up about other social issues, because environmental issues are social issues, and climate change is a social issue. So how can we bring those other people together to understand that, like, we're all fighting for the same thing? And I think that's when we focus on the intersections, I think that is when the climate community can win. Because our issue relates to a lot of other issues across the board. You can talk about conflicts across the nation. You can talk about food security, food insecurity. Talking about economics. That's where we need to like talk to the people that care about those issues and get them to understand that, hey, climate is an issue that affects you as well.
That's what I talk to people all about. I feel like we're always trying to fight each other in the climate space. My cause is more righteous than your cause. I want the attention. We're competing for the funding. We're competing for the opportunities to go to conferences, to speak, to communicate, for mentorship, for all these aspects. But ultimately, we all want the same goal. We're all in it for the sake of our planet. And I think what you said about showing and just reiterating that we are all in it for the same end and focusing on those sweet spots, those intersections, is how we accomplish change. So Raquel, I want to ask you a question. Jordan mentioned some of these other players in the climate change space and in your work, be it at these conferences with young people going around Brazil. What are some groups of people, some demographics that you wouldn't necessarily think would be interested in the climate change talk that have gotten really excited about it?
I would say young people as a whole, because most of them didn't know about climate change and the problem that we're facing and what it has to do with like urban mobility or the problem that we're having here in my city, São Paulo, with water. We're missing water right now. So what's the link between this and climate change? And once they understand it, it's going to be like awesome. And I would say also about the indigenous people and the traditional communities that we have a lot here in Brazil, and they are the ones suffering the impacts. But they are mostly the ones that do not know about climate change and how can they deal with that. And that's a big problem. So our main goal this year as Engajamundo is to go to these traditional communities and indigenous people to make sure that they will be attending the conference and telling our leaders what are the impacts that they are facing in their community. So I think they are key actors in this process.
Keep us posted, because I completely agree. What Jordan was saying about it being climate being a social issue, an environmental issue, an economic issue. It takes a village, right? So thank you for bringing in even more players to that village. Let's toss it over to you, Esther. Who are the players that have either surprised you or stepped up to the board and wanted to be active part of the climate change dialogue?
I mean, and for me, I think the best partners that we have so far has been the most of the adults here who've adopted us as mentors. So they have supported us a lot. One of them has been Nimo Basi, the former chair of the Friends of the Earth International, and it's been an interesting part to see such kind of support that we have so far in this part of the country. But interestingly too, it's amazing to see how passionate global youth are about climate change. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's so inspiring to see that the young people really, climate change really matters to them, and that they're really willing to help each other, empower each other, work together, train each other, forget the race, forget the borders, just come together, be unified because they think climate change is the most important challenge. And to me, I think that's one of the most interesting aspects of it. But sometimes, from where I'm coming from, we find it so hard that adults can see that passion that we have to support us. So we really need to go out of the box to make sure that we get involved. Like, we need to induce youth participation in that sense. But I think that we're doing well. The tools that we have now are empowering us a lot. Social media is changing a lot of things about how we engaged, and hopefully we will continue to use the tools we have and the new ones that will be coming on board to engage, to empower, and then to inform young people and older ones around issues of climate change.
Engage, empower, inform young people. That's a trifecta for you. I love that. What are some of the tools? Toss it back to Jordan. Jordan, what are some of the tools that you have adopted that have been really effective for you? That you were excited about? Maybe new, maybe a little old school. What tools are you using today to get the message out?
I'll go with new school. I love the idea of this Google Hangout. Like, we're on this Google Hangout. Each of us are in different countries. Like, that's amazing. So each of us are bringing in different networks. And it's amazing. So look, I love the new school tools. It's made it so we can easily take this local issue and make it a global issue, and hear from different voices and and when we hear from different voices, we're hearing from different perspectives. We're hearing different experiences, and we're able to connect to this issue in different ways. So that's why I'm a huge fan of technology. Social media is another one. We can put out messages to the entire world. Maybe you might meet them and you might not ever meet them. But it's amazing because we're able to hear from these different voices and bring different voices to the table, and be able to educate and inform and activate other voices. So I'm for technology, all for technology.
Love it. Love it. Educate, inform, activate. You guys are, I mean, obviously you're powerhouses, but you're throwing out such powerful verbs that just compel me to action. What about you, Raquel? What sorts of tools are you using, online, offline, new, old? Take it where you want.
I totally agree with Jordan. Actually, Engajamundo wouldn't be possible if we didn't have like a Google Hangout, because since Brazil is almost a continent, we use Google Hangout as a tool to make sure that we have people from all around Brazil working in this climate movement. And I would like to add that like the topic of this Hangout is a message to our leaders. And I think firstly I would always thank my leaders because they're very open, and they've been hearing us as I wouldn't think it would be possible in the beginning. But mostly what I've learned from all of you girls, that's really nice again, is that the leaders have a lot to learn with young people. And that's the message I want to take from here. They have a lot to learn with us, and we have to be like strong enough to make sure that they will learn what they have to learn with us. So that's what I wanted to let as a final message.
No, thank you for putting that out there and for bringing us full circle. I think in and of itself, the last, I guess we're going on 40 minutes now, have been that lesson that we hope to offer up. And I think more dialogues like these are imperative, and to keep pushing the envelope with our leaders and to make our voices heard loud and clear. Let me throw it back over to Esther right now with a similar question that I said to Jordan earlier. How is climate change impacting people, not just now, but how do you see it impacting people directly in your country in 10 years or in 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, if I got the question correctly, you're asking me to share how climate change is impacting young people directly?
So how will it? How do you foresee it?
How will it?
So if we're talking about what's coming, now we're sort of moving on to that final wrap up and forecasting.
I mean, it will impact every aspect of our human lives, from affecting young girls to go to school because the school is flooded so much that they can't go to school, to affecting young people, young entrepreneurs who just start up their business because there's no jobs, they have to create a job by themselves because there's no power, but affecting farmers who don't even have access to improved seedlings that are adaptive to climate change, to affect every aspect of food security, even human security. We're having people migrate a lot in Nigeria right now that may be costing the country that we are having in some part of the country. So climate change will impact every aspect of human life. I mean, from our access to school, access to jobs, access to settlement, in fact, to even our reproductive health and rights, really. So we have to look at it in the sense that climate change is serious. It's really, we're going to have a lot of migration. A lot of people are going to migrate from the north part of the country to the south, and the population is going to be so high, and the infrastructure cannot carry the high number of population people, and there's issues of access to infrastructure, and young girls being predisposed to dangers because they're women. So we see a lot of things, and now in my country where a lot of conversation are going to agriculture, we're seeing that without strong focus and action on climate change, whatever investment you're doing in agriculture in terms of creating jobs will not materialize because there are no forecasts for climate change. Climate change is affecting agriculture, and we need to understand that it will affect agriculture more now because the years are coming by. And at the center of this issue, the young people who are looking for jobs in agriculture, who may not also understand the issue of climate change, where government may not even be taking it into consideration that it may have impacts in agriculture. So we need to look at it holistically that way. And then, of course, we talk about our own human security. When we don't have a place to stay because of flooding, as a young woman, you're at risk because so many things, really. I mean, So climate change is going to affect a lot of things, from access to education, employment, agriculture, every aspect of human lives.
It really, really does. And thank you for broadening that out. And those are, Jordan, that's what you're talking about. Those are those touch points, and why every single sector of society must be brought into this conversation. Sometimes they don't even realize just how much we all will be affected by climate change. So Jay, let's toss it back to you and say, Esther just spoke about the greater impact of climate change in every aspect of our human life. And Raquel sent this powerful message that leaders have a lot to learn from young people. Mm-hmm. What's your message to bring those two together, the leaders of today and to leaders of tomorrow?
My message will be for the leaders of today. So I would say that the leaders of today, we have this really big opportunity to change the face of the next 5, 10, 15 years. We have this huge opportunity when we begin to look at this issue holistically, and begin to, us being these environmentalists that have the education, but are we looking at the intersections? We have the motivation and we have the inspiration, but are we looking to the leaders, our leaders that are currently in office, for help and for that mentorship? And begin to kind of, I would say, make this happy marriage, because a lot of times the youth, we're fired up and we want to be at the tables and we're getting at the tables, but are we making sure that we're bringing the voices that aren't at the tables to the tables as well? Young people across the world, we are this generation that isn't really brought, that is in a lot of ways, I just lost my train of thought, that is in a lot of ways underrepresented young people. We are this underrepresented group, but are we understanding that we're underrepresented and we need to bring those indigenous communities to the table as well? For instance, in the States, in the United States, just like across the world, the communities, these economically disadvantaged communities of color, will be affected by climate change and are already seeing the impacts of drought, already seeing the impacts of food insecurity. But are we bringing them to the table when we talk about environmental issues? Let's make sure that we're bringing the voices and the experiences and perspectives to the table as we move up as young leaders of today as well. So think about the underrepresented, and think about those voices, and begin to try to use your platform to activate other voices as well.
And just to add something, Jordan, I believe that on what you were saying, the powerful and magical thing about youth is that we represent everyone. We represent gays, lesbians, and black people, and indigenous people. They are all young. In Brazil, we are 25% of the population. So yes, we do represent all of them. So we have to put them on the table, as you were saying, to make sure that we are hearing their voices as well.
I couldn't agree more. I'm here listening and being so inspired by 3 incredibly powerful, articulate women. So let's just go down the line one more time. I want one sentence, and I know you all have a lot to say, so I want you to keep it really short, no semicolons in these sentences. I'll start with Esther. Mm-hmm. One sentence for leaders. Your message to on International Youth Day 2014.
My message to the leaders is to practice what you preach.
Jordan.
Yeah, practice what you preach, that's all.
That was so fast. That was so fast. I would say create policy to ensure that young people are always at the table.
Create policy to ensure that young people are always at the table. All right, and Raquel.
What I would say is going to be, don't mess it up. You have the chance to make sure that our generation is going to be really, I just passed on the one sentence. So let's stay with them. Don't mess it up.
Okay, sorry, my camera had to plug in my computer there, but I think practice what you preach, create policy to ensure that young people are always at the table, and don't mess it up. Thank you guys for inspiring me, for energizing me, and thank you for sharing this with the people watching all around the world. I hope you've all taken something away, and I hope that these leaders here, we are not only going to be the change we wish to see in the world, we're going to bring those underrepresented voices to the table, we're going to focus on action, and we're going to keep showing up and keep leading this fight for a healthy, safe, just planet. So be sure to get involved. There's amazing efforts going on all around the world today on International Youth Day and with Climasphere and with the UN Foundation. So thanks for joining our Google Hangout, and we'll see you guys again soon, I hope. Have a nice day, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Erin.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you too. It was fun.